Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hello, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today we're discussing Deep Space Nine, Season 5, Episode 10, Rapture. Sisko experiences a series of unclear visions regarding the future of Bajor.
While wearing a new uniform.
Yes, I was going to say, Bashir took the time to point out that there's something ever so slightly different about himself. With him saying, "Does my uniform look brighter?" No, it looks grey.
Please stare at my uniform and notice that it's different.
Yes, these are the new style uniforms from Star Trek First Contact. And they look pretty cool.
I like them in general, but Sisko looks like he's wearing too many layers. Because
he is.
Because he is.
Because his uniform was too big for this episode. They got him the wrong size.
Is that true, or are you messing with me?
No, it's true. His comm badge is in the wrong place on the uniform. It's too high up. Or it's like in the grey bit when it should be in the black bit or something. I think in the next episode he's got the right size uniform.
Okay, that's good. Because these uniforms on the other crew members look really good. They're more fitting. They don't look like they're swishing around in excess cloth. But Sisko looked off.
They had a serious wardrobe malfunction on the one character that this episode is entirely about. So
yeah, we see him thinking. A lot.
Aside from the snappy new fashions, this was another Bajor Prophets episode.
Also another Obelisk episode.
Have they had obelisks before?
Yeah, that one that caused earthquakes, or I think that's what they transported onto DS9. I think it's from the first season.
No, that's season 2. I think it's called The Alternate.
Okay, The Alternate.
So every time obelisks have turned up, it's caused problems.
They are kind of ominous things, I guess.
Yep. Large phallic pointing at the sky. Don't know why that makes it ominous, but there you go. As I was watching this episode, I couldn't help but think that Sisko was basically just tripping for most of it.
I thought that's what it was until later in the episode. But it comes off that way, that he's become obsessed and he's under the influence of something.
Well, he experiences head trauma and then he just starts acting funny. And everyone gives him a pass, no matter what he does.
I don't understand how he can make the time to sit around and stare at this spire all day.
I don't understand why he would. I mean, you could just put the symbols on a piece of paper and put it in your pocket.
Yeah, that would make more sense.
It did seem like he took several days off just bouncing around in the holosuite, and no one really minded.
Makes you question how essential his job is.
Especially when Bajor is on the verge of joining the Federation. You'd think that's when he would be most needed.
Except they decided to proceed without him even present.
What does Sisko do?
Stare at things intensely?
He did find the ancient city of Bahala, though that's pretty good.
the 20,000-year treasure hunt now ends.
Yes, it ends 200 meters underground for some reason.
Something about sediment, yada yada, and we're done.
That's okay. 20,000 years, 200 meters of rock. That's 1 centimeter of rock a year. No wonder they abandoned the city. That line was particularly badly written. They could have used any other number of explanations for why they're trotting out the tired old cave set, such as, oh, the city was swallowed in an earthquake, or, rocks fell on it, or something.
Rocks fell.
Yeah, anything like that. But no, it just happened to get covered in a massive geological strata in no time at all. 20,000 years is nothing in geological terms.
And you would think some sort of event happened where this thing suddenly became unknown. If it were just layers of sediment, it sounds like it was abandoned because no one cared about it anymore. It wasn't that special to begin with.
I don't know if it was sediment. It didn't look like sedimentary rock. It looked like or I should say the cave set looks like proper volcanic stuff. In any case, I don't know. This isn't the first time that they found a city underground in a cave, because the Herc homeworld where they found the Sword of Kalis was in a cave. Well, it was in the same cave, to be honest. They need to read a book on archaeology, because it isn't just finding things in caves. In fact, that's rarely what happens.
Perfectly preserved.
Caves don't form like that either. Caves are caused by tidal action. If there was a city and it got covered in rock, and then waters carved a cave out, they would carve through the city as well.
It doesn't make any sense.
Not really, no.
I have to point out that when Cisco blasts through the wall, he's not at all worried about ruining the structural integrity of this cave, which is something his son did and nearly killed himself, so he should be worried about that.
It seems unnecessary, especially as they have transporters.
Not as dramatic. He's got to impress his lady.
There could be an amazing fresco on the other side of the wall. Just blast
Not
a hole
anymore.
straight through it. Like the Last Supper was a fresco, and it had a doorway cut into it. So next time you see the Last Supper with Jesus and all the disciples, look under Jesus' feet. You see the top of a doorway.
That reminds me, someone points out the painting is really small and says, oh, I thought it would be a lot bigger. That has to be a reference to the Mona Lisa, because that thing is tiny and it's always talked about and everyone knows about it. And so it's a lot bigger in people's minds. Anyway, that's the first thing that came to my mind when that line was spoken.
It's true of quite a lot of art, and also old manuscripts tend to actually be kind of small. Of course, all the reproductions are massive.
To match their mental real estate.
Well, because it's easy to make things big nowadays.
Yeah, that too.
This episode, I felt, was beset by so many weird things.
What weird things?
So many weird things. Do you just want a list?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, Kira says the city of Bahala was a myth, but this painting proves that it really existed. That's not how paintings work. It doesn't prove anything.
The Mona Lisa proves there was a surreal landscape that she stood in front of.
Then Cisco starts Blade Runnering it. He says, oh, look, there's a reflection in the waterfall. Zoom in D6 and all that. So you've got this kind of Blade Runner homage, and you're sort of thinking, okay, I can deal with the homage. It's a bit quirky, but fair enough. A couple scenes later, he's doing a Close Encounters homage. What? Is this a parody episode? Then there were characters saying things that were quite out of character.
Such as?
Worf says there's an ancient Klingon proverb, you cannot loosen a man's tongue with root beer.
Why is that a thing?
Yeah, he could have just said fruit juice or water. Something common. Why root beer?
That bothers me because Quark has complained about root beer because it's a distinctly human drink. So I don't want Klingons talking about it in an ancient proverb.
What's especially frustrating is that it would have been a fantastic proverb if he'd just said an actual drink that fit in. You cannot loosen a man's tongue with water.
Yeah.
But Worf wasn't the only one. Odo says that keel hauling is a naval tradition. Has he ever seen a boat?
He reads a lot of old novels. There's got to be someone who died at a dock, and then he had to look up what a ship looks like.
Okay, so maybe he's read a book about pirates and they did keel hauling. But it's him, Worf, and Kira, none of who are human, talking about keel hauling being a naval tradition. Was it for any of those races? It's kind of a specific thing. Now, if he'd said something like burial at sea, I could say, well, fair enough. Other species, alien species, probably buried people at sea or whatever. Keel hauling is a little bit more specific, so it sort of stuck out to me that these characters kept mentioning things that were very human.
When Sisko decides to keep the visions, that was out of character to me. That he's willing to die and not see his son grow up, that doesn't gel with what I've seen of Sisko.
At that point, they should have gone straight to Dr. Bashir, said, Sisko is tripping balls. He is not able to consent to medical treatment because he is off his head. Please save his life. That's normally what would happen. Or something like that. He's clearly not in the right mind. I'm not talking about, he's a little bit funny. He's way off his head. And Bashir has medical tests to prove this.
And then when it's up to Jake to make the decision to save his dad's life, it's very obvious what he's going to choose. So that wasn't dramatic to me at all.
It's weird that it wasn't up to Sisko's father.
They couldn't bother.
Talking of not bothering to get the right person, did you notice that Shakar was not at the signing ceremony?
I didn't.
No. Yes, the First Minister of Bajor did not bother showing up. Actually, they couldn't afford to hire him for one scene.
Well, you see, he doesn't believe in those meetings. He thinks they're perfunctory, and I don't know where to take this.
Politics should be left to the politicians.
Here we go.
Oh wait, he is a politician.
Whoops.
Whatever. We mentioned in a previous episode that Garrick spent 6 months in prison in less time than Kira took to gestate the child, which should be 5 months. Now, Cassidy, who got chucked in prison before Garrick for a 6-month sentence as well, is finally out. So not only was her sentence considerably longer than Garrick's, both of them are somehow longer than Kira's pregnancy, which should be shorter than both of their sentences.
Her vicinity to the wormhole
Oh, that explains
is
it.
messing with
I'm
her-
convinced.
Okay. It is the will of the prophets that this baby gestate for longer than it should.
Well, you could argue that it's a human baby, so maybe the gestation period is longer. And maybe Garrick really did get let out for good behavior, although that doesn't seem likely.
He knows how to play his cards.
And that's exactly why they wouldn't let him out. Speaking of the will of the prophets, Kai Wynn turned up and made things complicated.
She made things complicated?
Yeah, usually she's just sort of, power good, Federation bad. Now she's like, Cisco good, Federation I don't have an opinion.
Oh, I like that she's conflicted. She was so happy to have an enemy, and now that it's muddled, she's confused.
It meant a little bit of sympathy eked in for her character. I don't want to feel sympathetic for Kai Wynn. She's a baddie.
Did this happen because she talked about being in prison?
It's sad to hear people were mistreated during the occupation. Even if they're bad people, they should at least be bad and then get their comeuppance because of their own dastardly deeds.
It's okay, we can still root against her. I think there's enough in her history to warrant it.
No, it's not. It has to be her own undoing. If someone went back in time and found Hitler when he was 7 years old and then beat the life out of him, would that really be satisfying? It's just some kid with a silly mustache.
and bad art. Actually, his paintings aren't even that bad.
They're okay. Wait, is that a line we really want to take on this?
So you want to see Kai Wynn become full Hitler before anything bad happens to her?
If she gets chucked in prison and beat up, it should be because she was a power-hungry, crazy Hitler, not because some Kardashians turned up 50 years ago and happened to throw her in a prison for no reason.
Oh yeah, I'm not happy that she suffered through that. I want to see her fall because of her recent actions. But having suffered that doesn't excuse her actions now.
No, not at all. She was fine in this episode. She was Cisco's trip buddy.
Yeah, she guided him through his trip. Sort of.
Hey, he's got electric brain, and he phones up Kai Wynn and says, hey, for some reason I'm phoning you. It's 3 a.m. I need a hit of orb. Bring an orb. I'm gonna go out, have an all-night bender. And then he gets that, and then he comes in and says, no, Bajor shouldn't join the Federation. And Bajorans, being fickle and having the capacity to listen to any damn thing and choose to go with it, decided not to do it. So Kai Wynn wasn't really being evil, she was just being complicit, I guess. It's not really bad.
There's no way she foresaw Cisco delaying the acceptance into the Federation of Bajor. That's the only way she would be evil here. She was acting as any other person from Bajor in that position would. She didn't do anything evil here for once.
Half the other characters were complicit as well. Quark, Kira, Cassidy Yates, the Admiral, Bashir. Only Jake really sort of said, hang on though. So I can't really say Kai Wynn was being a super baddie here. Which is good. It's kind of gets rubbish when characters just turn up and cast their evil spells and wander off.
Cisco, despite being captain, does a bunch of things in this episode where he's not monitored and there are risks and no one seems to care. He's going through caves. He's tripping off an orb. It's strange to see him do one thing after another and no one really cares. He's done a lot of stuff in the past where he goes off on his own, but here we have one after another, and he's clearly not in his right mind or typical mind because he's out of his mind anyway, but that should set people off, but it doesn't.
He's under extreme medical duress for the entire thing. I guess they did explain it pretty well. The Admiral said, Bajorans will be really annoyed if we get rid of you. Otherwise, we would have.
I was glad that was in there because it needs to be said.
Well, otherwise there would be a massive question mark over this episode. Why does Sisko still have his job?
Yeah.
One tiny little thing I'd like to praise is that Sisko in one of his visions mentioned it was the Peldor festival. Peldor Joy and all that.
Oh, right.
Nice little callback there.
It's nice when they do things like Peldor Joy and then it's not completely forgotten and it continues to exist in this world.
Well, half of world building is supporting the stuff you've built. If you just constantly build new bits, which Star Trek is quite commonly they do, the new bits just don't stand up. Nothing glues together. It doesn't really feel like a proper world. It feels just like they're making it up as they go, because they are.
Which is not satisfying for a viewer.
No, they need to tie it all together. So it's nice that they do little hooks. They could do better than that, but I'll take that.
It's better than never mentioning it again, and it's also better than having a Peldor Joy episode every season.
Oh god, that would be bad. You are wonderful at predicting what's going to happen. Sisko gave some fairly vague comments. Cloud of Locust going from Bajor going to Cardassia. Something like that. Bajor must go it alone. What's your take on all this?
I didn't think about this while watching the episode, so I will improvise now, and I'll say Cardassia will declare war on Bajor.
That should make the next episode pretty interesting.
Oh, I didn't mean the very next episode.
No. I'm just joshing you. But we'll have to see if Cardassia declares war on Bajor. I don't know how you got that from a cloud of locusts hovering above Bajor and then going to Cardassia.
That's what that always means.
Is it? Oh. I am now informed.
The more you know.
Do you have a quote from the astral planes?
Sometimes being the emissary isn't such a bad thing.
This is Sisko finally kind of accepting his role as crazy Bajoran religious dude.
He's realized the inherent power of the role, so I think that appeals to him. That's my headcanon coming in.
Hoping it wasn't that shallow, but there you go. This episode actually is kind of a trilogy with there's an episode called Destiny where they're setting up the subspace radios through the wormhole, at which point he was very unkeen on the prophecies and all that. Didn't want to be the emissary. And then we had a session where the guy wanted everyone to take up their Dejara, and that's when Sisko decided that he really should probably be the emissary because it wouldn't be good if someone else was the emissary. And now we have him begrudgingly accepting that he is awesome in the eyes of the Bajorans.
If Cisco wants an entire species to worship him, he could do better than Bajorans.
You good?
Yeah, probably.
Well, you've got to rank them on a graph with awesomeness on one side, one axis, and gullibility on the other axis. Now, Bajorans don't have much awesomeness. They're not terrible, but they're not particularly interesting. However, gullibility, they are off the side of the graph on that one. So that puts them well into the region of being able to become a religious icon.
Definitely in agreement there.
So who else do you have? Well, Klingons, not particularly gullible, not ungullible. Awesomeness through the roof, though. You're not likely to get them.
They would be such a great get.
Yeah, but they're too awesome. They wouldn't hack it. Cardassians, kind of awesome, not gullible at all. Same with the Romulans. They wouldn't fall for any of this stuff. Ferengi, no awesomeness, no gullibility.
Just a lost cause there.
Yeah, if you ended up a religious figure for them, just forget about it.
If you are a religious icon for the Ferengi, that means you are made of latinum and not alive. Not ideal.
You know what we should do?
Move on to the next episode.
That is correct.
It's what the prophets would want.
I imagine so. And that's what speaking to the prophets is really about. Just making something up and then saying that that's probably what they would say.
And have faith in it.
Faith is everything.